Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's now 3:30, so we've got lots to pack in this afternoon, so we'll get going. A really big welcome to all of you. We're really delighted to have you all here. This is our 6th school leadership update so far since September. It was new in September, and I'm just so pleased to see so many people enrolled on it. It's the largest number we've had so far, and really in what potentially was going to be a pretty hectic week, I think, for you as school leaders. So well done for actually making it this far. And I really hope that you've had a positive first week. I'm sure you've got some positive stories to tell, and I think Kath and Brad are going to try and collect some of those in a little bit. I'm not going to speak for long because we need to get on to the nitty-gritty, but I just wanted to introduce myself to those of you that don't know me already. My name's Alice McShane, and I'm the School Effectiveness Team Lead. And these are our school leadership updates. And so you'll see different members of the team on different updates, but we're all part of the same group. We're the School Effectiveness Team. I want to let you know that we're going to also be putting these sessions up on the website, and they are free. They're free to everyone, so it doesn't matter whether you're an academy or a maintained school. I'm really pleased to see we've got some colleagues from Dorset on the list, and there are some schools on there that I don't recognise that I think must be out of county. So anyone and everyone can access these. These school leadership updates are designed to be a practical tool for you. Practical things, templates, summaries, pointers to good practice on a range of what are quite complex subjects. Certainly since September, we've talked about Ofsted interim visits, we've looked at remote learning, and now we're moving into that new phase around the challenges of reopening. So please do go on the website and access them. If colleagues that you've on your school leadership teams, that you've seen your leadership teams that you would like to access these, then you can look at it after the event and use it with staff in training sessions. I'm going to pass on to Kath and Brad in a moment, but I just wanted to let you know that as a team, we're putting our CPD offer to schools under review, and we're going to be giving it quite an overhaul. Now, these school leadership updates are the first part of that. We've put a lot of work into these, but over the summer term, we're really going to be spending a lot of time thinking about what it is that schools need to support them in their journey around school improvement and leadership. And we don't want to do that without your voice. So please do watch out for opportunities to join in consultation around the kind of offer that you need and what it needs to look like, how it's going to suit you best, what it's going to need to be like in order for it to be attractive to you. So please keep your eyes open for that. I'm going to put the email for the team in the chat box. So if you do want to give us some feedback or you've got any thoughts, let us know how you think these SLUs are going. Really be appreciative of any feedback. And I'm going to back out now, and I'm going to hand over to two of the team. That's Kath Powell and Brad Murray to take us through the slides. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Kath Powell here. So I'm going to start off the session this afternoon and just say we are going to do a whistle-stop tour through the slides and resources that have been sent to you already. Okay, and then we really would like to focus the session on question and answer. And please keep popping questions into the chat. One of the team will be manning the chat, and we'll try our best to answer all of your questions in there. And we'd also like, I know Brad will talk in a few minutes about other things that we'd like you to put into the chat. So these sessions really are for you. Everybody at the moment has their mic and cameras muted, and that's because we're in webinar mode. But if there's anything, please put it in the chat to ask us, and we'll do our best to answer those. Okay, so first of all, this is the first of 3 sessions, and they're going to run similarly to last term. Okay, this is session 1. And then we have a further session next week and another one the week after. The focus today really is around sort of that reopening and all of the documentation that have come out and best practices come out over the last couple of weeks from the DFE and wider fields. Next week there's a focus around assessment, and the third one is really around catch up, and the resources for next week will come out tomorrow if you've registered for that one. Okay, and they will run the same format. Resources will go out on the Friday and a Q&A the following week. Okay, so the aim of the session really is, throughout the next 25 minutes and then followed up with a Q&A, we'd really like to really use this as a signposting to ensure that you've got all of the understanding and where to go for all of the opening guidance. So I know lots of you have been wading through over the last 2 weeks, and there's been so much come out since the 22nd of February. It really is that signposting, and also to share and signpost quality resources that can help you during this process over the next couple of weeks and the next coming terms, to share any practice that we've picked up, and really really to get you talking in the chat about the sort of things that have been happening in your school. Okay, I'm just going to hand over to Brad now, just for a few minutes to talk about the chat.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brad Murray, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm one of the education advisors on the school effectiveness team. It's really great that you are here, and we really appreciate you taking the time, given it's the first week after full opening. What we would like to say, all of us and the rest of our colleagues as well, is a huge thank you to you for all that you have been doing over the last year. We think you have been truly remarkable, both you and your staff. We think you've done an incredible job. And it's quite useful to know, isn't it, sometimes how these messages are passed on to the DFE and the RSC and Ofsted. And we did want to assure you actually that senior leaders in our organisation and in Devon County Council have been having regular meetings with all of those organisations, and they have been saying how hard you've been working, but also, even more importantly, how well you've been doing. So just from the point of housekeeping, we've got the chat going. If you've got any questions, please add them. But also, if there is anything that you would like to add with regard to any of the practice that you are beginning to think about or you are engaging in, please add that, because we'd love to hear from you. And also, given that this is the first week back in terms of full reopening, is there anything that you've been doing which you have been really pleased about or you would like to share? Because certainly in our team, when we've been hearing back from head teachers, they've loved the fact that the children are back. They've been telling us about various activities that they've been engaged in, and so far we're getting very positive feedback from schools about how well these first few days have gone. Now, we are very conscious, of course, that you are already into the first week of full reopening, and some of this information has already been distributed and you're using it. But we're also very aware that this is a process and you are in a process. And so what we want these webinars and these support episodes to support you with as much as possible is, as you go through this process, up until Easter, into the summer term, and then looking forward to September. So I will hand back to Kath.
Thanks, Brad. Okay, so when you open the resource, what you'll find is the first 3 pages very much around the links, and what we've tried to do is distill all of the key documentation that's come out from the DFE since the 22nd of February up until the 5th of March, and we've put a quick synopsis there for you that will give you the update about what that documentation will support you with. And the key one obviously is the school's coronavirus or the operational guidance, which we're going to unpack a little bit more in a minute. Okay, so that's the first 2 slides. There's key considerations at the bottom of each slide for you to really think about, and questions you might want to ask you and yourself and your senior leaders when you're having your meetings. The third slide, what we've tried to do there is unpack again some signposts to some good practice. If you look, for example, the EEF toolkit, which we'll unpack a bit later on, really has updated their guidance and to support schools planning for reopening. But also we've identified a couple of papers, one from ACSL, one from NAHT, okay, which we found that would be useful for you to consider during this process in the short term, medium term and long term as we head towards the autumn term. Okay, so I'm going to start off by unpacking that key bit of guidance. Now, as you opened it, you're probably thinking that actually looking at the first page, it looks very similar to the guidance that came out in the autumn term. But we just want to highlight to page 6 where the fundamental changes come in this guidance. We're going to unpack those a little bit, and we're going to really focus on the curriculum expectations, because that is very different from that of the autumn. Okay, so I'm just going to pass back to Brad, who's just going to unpack some of the key bits there. Brad, okay. You just need to turn your microphone on.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm not going to dwell too much on this slide, because you're aware of the issue around face coverings, most particularly in secondary schools, and you're dealing with that. So I'm going to move then on to the fact that you are also engaging in the testing process, most particularly secondary schools. Again, we think you're remarkable in secondary schools, because we know the number that you are having to work through, hundreds, and we've just heard about thousands in one school. With regard to attendance, of course, the attendance of all children is now compulsory, but we have still got the issue, certainly until March 31st, about staff and children who are clinically extremely vulnerable. So if we just move on to that, our understanding is at the moment that the vast majority of children who are clinically extremely vulnerable are still being kept at home. But I just wanted to talk through one scenario that I had a discussion with about a head teacher quite recently. And that was a parent whose child is clinically extremely vulnerable, but really wanted her child to be in school. And the school were questioning whether or not that would be appropriate. So our advice has been, albeit that you have your own risk assessments and you know the context of your families and children, that you would need to be very guarded about that. And the particular advice for this individual was, we don't think it's appropriate at the current time. Please go back to your doctor, get a letter from him or her, and if they feel it is safe for your child to return to school, then we'll have another conversation. So then, moving on again, as Kath said, there are some key changes in the guidance around the curriculum implications from the operational guidance that came out in February. We have highlighted those because there's some really useful information on pages 52 to 54, which we wanted to draw your attention to. And we will be picking up on more of that as this briefing progresses. Part of that, of course, is the issue around exams. We have another briefing, the second briefing on assessment, which is next week. So we're just going to pass over that at the moment, because you're going to have a lot more information that you can refer to during that second briefing. And just be aware that you will have been keeping your eye on those children whose parents may be considering or moving towards elective home education. This is some new and updated guidance. So we're certain that you will have been following that guidance, referring to your risk assessment, but just be aware that it's there. So with regard to the early years foundation stage and key stage 1 and 2, you will almost undoubtedly be aware that the expectation is that you still should maintain a broad and balanced curriculum right throughout your school, whether you are primary or secondary, and I'm addressing primary at the moment. There is, though, the full recognition that you may well need to make some adaptations, both in the early years foundation stage, but also key stages 1 and 2. So in the early years foundation stage, particular emphasis on the prime areas of learning, and also the opportunities to given as the children to be given as many opportunities as possible for some outdoor education, for those outdoor exercises and opportunities. And then at key stage 2, again, the prioritization around some of the key gaps that you're identifying, although we are going to talk about language later on with regard to early reading and phonics, reading and mathematics, and then what other issues may be arising in the wider curriculum. We are also aware, of course, and you will be acutely aware of the importance of vocabulary and the children articulating their learning. And what our understanding is, both in Devon and nationally, is that one of the issues that children and teachers have been experiencing is the lack of opportunity, certainly for those children who've been educated at home, to engage in talking about their learning, exploring their learning verbally. And so we would be suggesting that you seriously consider how you will build that into your plans to move forward, and the regular opportunities for the children to talk about their learning, perhaps often before they actually put it into their books. So I'm now going to hand back to Kath.
Okay, so I'm just going to unpack a little bit more around Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 and 5. Okay, again, the guidance is very clear. I think, historically back in autumn, there was a little bit more flexibility, but the DfE have been quite clear about the full curriculum must be delivered across all key stages. And that consideration, particularly if there's going to be any modification at Key Stage 3 to address those gaps found in English and mathematics, but they must ensure that there's still a broad curriculum for all pupils from year 7 to 9 that includes all of the languages, humanities, arts, physical education, sport, RE and citizenship. And it's really important that that curriculum does not get narrowed. And I think the key message there is really thinking about what's the fundamental key knowledge and skills that pupils need to learn. So any alteration to the normal delivery of the curriculum, they still get that broad and balance, but you create that space to address any gaps in mathematics or English. And at Key Stage 4 and 5, again, there shouldn't be any restrictions of the curriculum, and pupils in year 10 and 11 must continue with all of their non-examination subjects as well that are just as important within that curriculum, including PE, and RE, any of those subjects that are statutory, they must still continue during this time as we go through to the end of the academic year. And I think the key thing to really consider again, in secondary is opportunities for oracy, especially where pupils have been working from home and they've been doing an awful lot of online learning and they've had quite a limited ability to engage with their peers other than through the screen or through the chat. Really engaging in opportunities for oracy within lessons to ensure that the pupils get a chance to catch up on that. And I will say the word catch up. There's a key consideration here, and we've talked about this in the team, and we've heard a lot of heads really thinking about the sort of language about pupils coming back and really thinking about, we do know that the government have talked about catch-up funding, they're talking about gaps, but really thinking about that reshaping, reforming, that positive language, that continue, that preparing, and that really thinking about, this is about re-energizing and refining and preparing pupils for what is going to come next, rather than that catch-up and recovery. And I think that's been a bit of feedback that we've had from heads around the county. I'm just going to move on. I'm going to talk now a little bit about inspection and give you a quick update on inspection. So as most of you are probably aware, Ofsted have paused all of their Section 8 inspections this week for 1 week, and then from next week for the remainder of this term they plan to continue with their Section 8 inspections, which will continue remotely as they have done since earlier on in this term, and they will be in the same format. The focus will be in adequate schools, double RI schools and some RI schools. The inspections now for this term will be 1 day with 2 HMI. Where schools are smaller, there will be one HMI for that day. And again, there will be one key judgment made, and that will about whether the school is or is not providing effective provision for the pupils within their current context. And they will resume next week. What we also know is between now and the end of this term, there will be some pilot work, and Ofsted are doing work to look at refining and reshaping and thinking about the Ofsted framework as to how and when they can restart inspections during the summer term and what that might look like. And as and when we get any updates, we will let you know. Okay, but as far as we are aware at the moment, Ofsted are looking to resume inspection in some way, shape or form in the summer term, but what that will look like will depend upon the pilots that they are running over the next 3 to 4 weeks. We also just wanted to point out that they did release a very useful tool last week, it's the 2nd of March, and there's a link here to that, and that's about remote education and SEND. But actually there's little video clips and there's some really good supportive resources for just generic teaching pupils with additional needs that have come out of their work over the last couple of months, and that's a really useful tool to be thinking about from a CPD tool. I'm gonna move on very swiftly, and please post those questions in the chat. It's all very quiet at the moment. Okay, so let's really think about that, supporting pupils back into school. And it's fabulous to know that we are day 4 into the reopening in full of schools, and I know a lot of you have had 40-50% of pupils in over the last couple of weeks, and it does really feel like just that last piece of the jigsaw this week have come back in. And we've tried to unpack some real
Okay, sorry about that. That's the vagaries of having an internet connection at times. So I'm just going to pick up where Kath left off there. So looking at this slide, we've got a variety of resources that we have just highlighted to you around not only considering the return to the formal academic curriculum, but those pastoral and extracurricular activities as well. And we have just found that there are a range of resources out there, some of which you may well be familiar with, to support you with that. So for example, the MindEd learning platform, the Whole School Send platform, and also the Send advisors in Babcock LDP have also produced a number of guides, and we've given you a link there to the Senko guides and How Can I, and we're going to reference you to another document in a moment. And then also Young Minds, Mental Health Foundation, Childline, and also some resources from the Autism Trust as well. So we hope that in providing those links and those resources, that might give you the opportunity to support you a little bit further as you continue the return to school. So if I just go back for a moment.
Apologies, Brad. I seem to have dropped out. I'm back in the room now. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Apologies there.
So in terms of supporting the children and planning for returning to school, the full opening of school, what we had sent to you was a document that you may well wish to consider in terms of how you may want to plan the time up until Easter, into the summer term, and then through the future. Now, we are only providing this as a working tool and as a potential aid memoir, and we have designed that because we consider that there are a range of things that you need to be considering, not least now this real emphasis on the return to the broad and balanced curriculum. So from our point of view and from our perspective, what we have found is that there have been quite a lot of schools who feel that during this interim period over the last year, they've been pleased that they have pretty much been able to follow a broad and balanced curriculum. So, for example, they have been able to provide some MFL teaching and support, some music and teaching and support. However, there have been others who have found that more difficult. And therefore, in this process, and as you are moving back now, you may wish to consider then, where are those subjects where you have been able to provide more opportunities for learning and actually see what the result of that in terms of the children's achievement, and where might there be some gaps as well? Now, I just wanted to pick up a little bit on these inspections that have been going on with regard to remote learning, because what you may well be aware of is that there has been quite a considerable focus on two aspects. The first is the curriculum offer, and the curriculum offer being made to those children in school and out of school. And we have no doubt at all that offer is still going to need to be considered, because unfortunately we know that some bubbles will at times not be in school, and that's already happening in some schools. And the second thing is consistency. What they've been really considering is the consistency of approach to learning and the curriculum offer for all children, including those who are vulnerable to underachievement, both in school and out of school. So then if we pick up on that in terms of your planning forward, is it worth considering not only your curriculum offer now as you move into the time up until Easter, but then also through to the summer term, but also the consistency of message and understanding of your staff, because we do think that's important. So do they really understand about what is expected of them, however you term this? I know some head teachers already have been saying to their staff, certainly we feel that there need to be some non-negotiables in terms of timetabling certain things, whether it's handwriting or in other areas of the different curriculum subjects. Is there that understanding? And how do you know, as senior leaders in the school, about how consistent that approach is as you go forward? Now, while we don't want to major on Ofsted, we do want to keep half an eye on it. And we know that consistency in terms of the offer, the entitlement, and what the children are achieving will be a big issue as you go forward. So as I said, on this document, we hope you find it useful. There are some key questions. We actually drew that up together, not only as members of our team and teams, but also in association with some of the head teachers in Devon. So this is, we've tried to widen our thinking and experience, not only as advisors, but head teachers who are actually on the ground doing this as well. So I'm just going to go back then to the PowerPoint slides. And then just moving on. I've already made specific reference to this slide while Kath just wasn't able to join us for a few moments. And now I'm going to hand back, in fact, to Kath.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to be quite swift because I'm really keen for us to take questions from everybody, and I'm sorry for disappearing. I don't know what happened there, but I'm back in the room. Okay, so again, on this slide, this is about best practice and some papers that have come out or some guidance that we think might be useful if you want to use. You've got the planning guide from the EEF, and this has been updated since September last year. So this is the new guidance and the updated guidance that has come out in conjunction with opening schools. And there's some great examples of practice to support ideas for the reopening there. And there's also a blog about the learning recovery and the role of diagnostic assessment. And again, the team will pick up a little bit more around assessment next week. There's also the Muller Gold finding there. There's a document and a research paper about the learning from remote education. And there's a focus on all aspects, particularly SEND, early years. And again, that's a report about what can we learn from remote learning. And if you go to the wider link for the Chartered College of Teaching there are also some other tools there to help you under the COVID-19 tab. And again, we just want to pose some key considerations and questions that you might want to think about as a leadership team, or you might want to think about with your wider staff around that sort of approach in coming back into school over the next sort of 3 phases. I'm going to pass it back over to Brad. I'll start off. The final thing really we wanted to talk about this afternoon was a couple of things that have come out since January as we approach your recruitment season, just to make you aware of really and to ensure that you haven't missed during what will be the peak time of recruitment. Over to you, Brad.
So obviously you have been, and we know you've been keeping a really close eye on your safeguarding all of your children, including those that are most vulnerable. Now, what we just wanted to do is make you aware that there is an addendum to keeping children safe in education that came through in January this year, and that's with regard to safer recruitment. And so there are, because we have now left the European Union, there are some changes to those teachers you can recruit, some changes to the safeguarding procedures you need to pay particular regard to in terms of safer recruiting. And what we have also done, what John Galling and the safeguarding team have done, is they have produced this document. So for those of you who do use our model exemplar of the single central record, John has provided this briefing paper about how you need to update now and record information on your single central record so that you're statutorily compliant.
That paper is available in the safeguarding area of the Babcock website, but what we will also do, we will attach that document along with the recording to everybody that's joined today, so you'll get that straight into your inbox if you wish to use that. Okay. Right, so that really takes us on to the final aspect of the presentation and just talking through. As we pose, the final thing we wanted to share with you was really some questions to pose that you may want to use again to consider during staff meetings, during senior leadership meetings, really based on the guidance we've shared, some key questions for you to consider during this time. And finally, we would really like you to reflect on how you're looking after yourself in proactive ways. This has been a really challenging term yet again on the back of 3 previously really challenging terms, and really ensure that you've got that professional and personal support, and make sure that you're looking after yourselves, and make sure that you know where to go over the next couple of weeks during this time to support yourself and the staff wellbeing. So please do take that time to look after yourself and make sure, if you need anything, you know where the school effectiveness team are and your link advisor. Should you need anything, please contact us. And I know there's other organisations and support. Please do make sure that you're looking after yourselves during that time. Okay, I think that's everything from me, and we'll open the floor. Please, would like you to pose any questions that you have around that. A lot to take in, but we'd also really like you to share all of the great things that have been happening in your schools, because I know from the ones we did last term, leaders really appreciated just getting some feedback and sharing what they've been doing in their school. And I will share one great little nugget that I picked up this week that I thought was lovely, and that meant that head teacher might be on with us, that a school had planted friendship flowers to celebrate the return of the full opening of school on Monday, and I thought that was wonderful, and I look forward to seeing those flowers, those in full flower when we can get into school. So please do put those nuggets that you're doing on there to share those and celebrate those great things. And another great thing was a school really thinking about the 19-day plan. As we entered this term, what was the 19 days going to look like, and really sort of unpicking what that would look like as they prepared pupils during this 3 weeks and 4-day period in the run up to Easter, which I thought was fantastic. Any questions?
So while we're waiting for those questions to come through, what we really want to reiterate is that if there is any support or advice that you need, please contact us. It might be just a chat about something. We're having lots of chats with head teachers and senior leaders. It might be something more fundamental as you think about perhaps reviewing or revising your curriculum offer. But we are here as a team, and our fundamental concern and driver is to be as supportive as possible to you. Still wondering if there are going to be any questions or some yippies, this has gone really well, or any concerns?
I think there's some very tired head teachers in the audience, Brad, which is not surprising after this week. Okay, we've got a great one from Cheryl in the chat, and again, really good, useful emails from parents to ask for any significant events that have happened for their child and family during lockdown since we saw them in December. A really good, great eye-opener, help them support those pupils on return to school. I think that's really great, Cheryl, and some real positives and things to celebrate there. But also, I think bearing in mind all of the experiences that the young people in your schools may have missed over the last 3 months that they would normally have, and think about some of those experiences that would normally enrich their cultural capital as part of their curriculum, and talking to schools about how they might sort of revisit some of those in a virtual manner, talking to schools about, they can't have the residential they would have had, so actually thinking about the summer term, how they might do big camp out at school if possible, engaging with outdoor ed centres or the outdoor service to think about, could they recreate some of those opportunities back on site, or some of those visits through a virtual manner that they would have normally done as part of that curriculum enrichment, and really developing that cultural capital, particularly for some of those young people that maybe have had quite a negative time during their time period at home.
Yeah, so thank you, Chris. that was really quite interesting, and in the range of different media opportunities to keep parents and children updated. And yes, I know that you had been using video updates as well, and they'd gone down very well, hadn't they, with the children and families. So thank you very much for that. It's been really quite interesting, hasn't it, moving through this time and seeing how we're using and adapting our use of technology.
We've got another one there from Andy, which is great, that actually is keeping a closer eye on your pupils through lockdown. And I think that's because it was a very different approach this lockdown, wasn't it, with remote education, has made transition much easier, particularly for vulnerable children and families. And again, you know, there's been so much more input. You know, most schools have much more clear eye on where the pupils are. You know, that's very different to when we came back to school in September, or when you came back to school in June last year, where they'd been away from school for quite a period of time and not had an awful lot of contact for some of those young people. There was another one that we just picked up, a great resource about supporting pupils with trauma.
Yep.
Can you see that one, Brad?
Yeah, from Matt, the work being done by Matt Jones and Catherine Dunnett.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a really useful pointer for you.
And we'll try and capture some of these and send them out in a Word doc, again, with the other documents, with the recording following the session today.
What I will say while we're waiting for a few more things to come through, and I'm sure this has been your experience as well, is that there are many schools who've been really, really pleased, and there have been a lot of positives coming through despite the difficulties in terms of their remote learning offer and what the children have been able to achieve, and what their teachers have been able to do, what your teachers have been able to do. And we would encourage you, actually, because we know after a period of time there can be an understandable tendency to think about what are the gaps, what do we do next, what are the key priorities for improvement, how do we adapt our school improvement plan or school development plan as we move forward, but also to really take the time, if you can, and I hope this doesn't sound patronizing, to reflect on the great work that you and your teachers have been doing, because some of it has been absolutely superb and we can take a lot of learning from that.
We've just got one from Cheryl about residentials. Cheryl, at the moment, in that opening guidance, there's no more direction at the moment around residential or trips and visits as per the main guidance document. I think as and when we get any more information, again, we'll filter that through your link advisor, and we'll try and feed that into any SLUs that are coming up. But as soon as we know any more information, Cheryl, we'll get that out to you. I got another one here, parent-carer relationships, talking about the key events and how parents are still maybe joining in with some of those activities, such as collective worship. And again, I think that reflects on what Brad talked about. You know, the papers that we've shared in here, some of them are about reflecting about all of the great practice over remote learning. And I don't think the landscape of teaching in schools will ever be the same again, because we've got this whole new dynamic around remote learning and what we've learnt through the use of technology. So there's some really thinking about the positives amongst everything that we can take forward and how that might link into your curriculum. And I know we'll probably pick up on some of those in 2 weeks' time when we talk about catch-up funding, when we talk about how you might want to utilise some of the things you've done during lockdown in supporting that. And also thinking about how some of that can feed in to some of your pedagogical approaches in school. Anything else to add on that, Brad?
I did just want to actually pick up on Emily's point about the juggling between bringing the children into school, nurturing them, supporting them, but also that running in tandem with the demand of subject leaders, monitoring and evaluation. And it is a hard path to walk, and we understand that and we recognize the challenges. I think my view would be that, but you do need to endeavour to walk that path. So there is definitely a time for reintegrating the children into school and supporting them and encouraging them and nurturing them. But if you can, also be thinking about how can you refine, adapt, and perhaps restart your monitoring and evaluation processes so that it is not too burdensome on your staff, but you do feel as senior leaders that you have got enough information about how well things are proceeding, how accurate things are, how much consistency there is going on in the school.
And again, I'm just picking up on that point from Emily again, Brad, talking about, you know, that Ofsted are doing pilots in the next couple of weeks, and that will inform what the EIF and any sort of visits will look like in the summer term. So you know, we wouldn't expect them to come straight in with that whole framework straight after the Easter holidays. So it is really about watch that space. But I think they are, you know, our understanding at the moment is they are really engaging with the sector to try and identify the best way to restart inspections, but with the right tone and manner. So again, as soon as we get any updates on that, we will let you know. But you know, I think they, you know, they are engaging with those pilot visits and to identify what that will look like. And I think the key thing is there, you know, having 100% engagement online. You know, that evidence of learning is not always in books, you know, and I think that's the key thing. The evidence of learning will often sit with those young people, and what those young people know and can remember and can recall about their learning when they're talking to inspectors. It's not all about what is in the books, you know, and also not being afraid to share your platform of Dojo or Seesaw or anything else like that, because if that's the platform you've used during a lockdown period, and I know some schools are really taking on board using some of those platforms as they've come back into school to support the learning journey of young people, and it not just all being in books. So I think it's about, again, learning and how we can really think about the positives of remote learning and lockdown and the way we've worked in the last 12 months.
Thank you for the other comments. I think the other thing that I think is worth saying, reflecting on, is that as an advisor, it's not me who's been at the chalk face in school day in, day out in the way that you and your teachers have. Neither is it HMI or some other Ofsted inspectors. And what we really want you to do is feel confident about what you've done, because you know your context, you know the work that you've done, you know your successes. You'll be clearer on where there are areas for development, and please try and be positive about that. And if you need our help with that, then we're more than happy to help you with it. But we do think as and when Ofsted return, there will be lots of things that you will be able to be positive about and provide evidence for.
And we just got a comment here from Anne, you know, difficult to isolate a group of staff and children, you know, 2 days after return. That is a real challenge. And I think if you look at some of the cases that will be coming through, particularly some of the secondary schools where they're doing all of the tests, you know, and I spoke to a CEO that, you know, this week, and that, you know, done over 3,500 tests had been undertaken in one secondary school. You know, that's no doubt there are going to be some negatives within that, and that is going to cause some bubbles to burst. And I think remote education is not going to go away, and that's still going to be there. And I will just highlight, yesterday the DfE did release an updated guidance around remote education with a little bit more guidance around safeguarding and about live stream lessons. So if you're in that situation where you have to go back to some live streaming, where you've got some pupils isolating at home and some pupils in school, please do cast your eye over that guidance that's been updated yesterday around safeguarding and live streaming lessons from the DfE in their remote education guidance.
Okay, well that's we're drawing to an end, so we've got about another minute or two. Any other questions or comments?
Or positives? It's great to see. I think a lot of people are talking about the noise, and actually it's a pleasure to have a noisy school, which is fantastic. The buzz of children talking and children in school. As Chris has said, we understand chatty and community in real terms. We've taken the positive from the negative.
Good for
Never
you.
will we complain against a chatty classroom. And again, thinking about that chatty classroom, you're developing that oracy and giving them the opportunity to have some of those conversations that they wouldn't have been able to do with their peers and with their teacher about life and about learning when they were working at home in quite the same way.
So you'll see that Alice there has put that link up.
Thank you for that.
Christopher, great to see you on Spotlight. That's fantastic. Thank you, Cheryl. As you know, this session and the previous sessions and future sessions will be recorded. So if there are any members of staff or colleagues that want to dip into them, then they will be available to you. And please, if you can, book on to the next 2 sessions, next Thursday and the Thursday after, because we're hoping that they will be really, really useful.
And again, we welcome any feedback around these sessions, and please do keep popping those comments in, positives, and we will go through all of the chat to ensure that we manage to answer all of the questions after this. So if there's any questions still that remain unanswered, we will get the answers out to you.
But once again, we'd really like to thank you for taking the time to attend. Thank you again for all the wonderful work you're doing in schools, and we do hope that tomorrow goes really, really well for you.
So we're now 4:16. We're conscious it's the end of a very long day at almost a very long week for you. Good luck tomorrow as you celebrate one whole week back all together. And I hope there's be some great assemblies with virtually, but having everyone in the building tomorrow. So take care. We're gonna just pause the recording and we're gonna close the meeting in the next couple of minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.